back, everyone. We have lots of questions and we're going to get right to them. Shannon, I think you have one for me.
Yes, this question is from Julie that she submitted through our Instagram page. And she writes, the Common App asks the student whether the parent works for a college or university. I do work for a university, and my son has absolutely no interest in attending that university and is not applying there. I am concerned colleges will read the yes response and assume he'll attend my university, holding this against his application. I think this probably gets a little bit to what we were talking about
I think it does.
in terms of making assumptions about what the college is going to think, and they're probably thinking very little. But
Yes.
let's clarify that for Julie. Is this the case? Does my son need to include a message that he is not applying to the university where his mom works? And just because I'm curious, do you know why this is a question on the Common App? Thank you.
Okay, so Julie, short answer, no, the colleges are not going to infer that. He was only interested in your school because you work there. And no, he does not need to include a message stating that he is not planning to attend that school. So going back to what I was talking about in the previous segment, the admissions officer is taking the application at face value. If he's applying to colleges where they are tracking demonstrated interest, if you listen to the first segment today, there was a lot of good stuff there about how to engage with the marketing, get on the school's mailing list, and there are lots of ways to show demonstrated interest. And if he's been doing that and he does a nice job on the application, they're not going to reject him out of hand because they think he's already committed to you. So to your school. So we'll get that out of the way. The reason that the Common App, I believe that the reason they asked this question is because of something called the Tuition Exchange Program. I'm going to give a shout out to my colleague, Jen Simons, who was the first to respond when I said, does anybody know why the the Common App asks this question? And this was her take. So the Tuition Exchange Program is essentially a group of colleges who have all agreed that they will offer discounts to students of people who work at other institutions, right? So one of the big things that at a lot of schools, colleges, that used to be a thing. So when I worked at Penn, I had a tuition discount at Penn for me, and at the time for my child. I have no idea if that still exists. A lot of the colleges have started to scale back on those programs because they're fairly expensive. But the deal was if you couldn't use it at the school that you worked at, because let's say it's a place like Penn and lots of kids are not going to get in, a bunch of schools got together and formed this tuition exchange program so that you could use a discount. Maybe it's a similar discount, typically not the same discount, but I suppose it could be, at a different institution that maybe your student is more interested in and actually could get accepted to. So one of the things you might want to think about, Julie, is does your institution offer a tuition benefit? And if so, is it portable, or is there something that he could use at a different institution? He might want to check that out. But as I understand it, the participants in the tuition exchange program asked that this question be added to the Common App so that they could track it. I think the other thing that we hear, certainly something that I would notice is that all of the applications that came into Penn where if the parent worked at the institution, they were already tagged as faculty staff. But that would help with the tag so that you would know if it hadn't been flagged, ooh, this person works for this institution. If you're a reader, if they work for our school, and you want to make sure that they get that tag so that they're appropriately, highlighted. Cool.
Perfect.
All right. So Shannon, Suzanne asks, I've been out of college for about 4 years and was paying on my federal student loans. I have 7 loans and I'm wondering if I should refinance or consolidate them. Please advise. Is there enough information to advise here?
Yeah, so I'm not going to tell Suzanne, unfortunately. Sorry, I'm not going to tell you necessarily which one or none of those things to do, but I can hopefully provide a little bit of clarification. First of all, Suzanne asked, should I refinance or consolidate them? Just to clarify the difference between those two programs. When you refinance student loans, you're typically taking your student loans from whatever lender they are with now, whatever kinds of student loans you have now, you are totally paying off those loans and taking out one big kind of new loan with a new lender that pays off all your old loans. So now you have a new loan, new lender. And you do that generally through the private market. New interest rate, all new terms to your loan. Consolidation, the federal loan consolidation program, your federal student loans remain federal student loans. They are just all kind of put now into one big loan, but they still retain all of the existing federal student loan benefits. So that's a big decision point there. Do you take any federal loans out of the federal program, put them into a private loan, and therefore give up all of the federal student loan benefits? Again, new interest rate, maybe higher or lower. And so often folks are tempted to refinance because they're offered a lower interest rate in the private market. And it may be a very legitimate decision to take that private lender up on that offer and refinance your loans if it's a significant discount in terms of the interest rate. But you do want to acknowledge you're giving up federal student loan benefits, including, deferment options if you go back to school, including, again, whatever interest rate you have, death and disability cancellation. Those sorts of things may go away when you basically change your loans into a private loan. Public service loan forgiveness goes away. I think this may be a particular, it's sort of always been a concern and something to think about, but now when there's a lot of talk in the government about potential loan forgiveness, some of the talk, I think, or some of the assumptions, I talk to a lot of people every day who are planning on borrowing student loans to pay for the next school year, and they're kind of unconcerned about borrowing because they're like, oh, the government's just going to forgive all that. Not so fast.
Yeah.
I think the possibility of forgiveness, student loan forgiveness, is kind of better now than it has been in recent memory, but it is certainly not a slam dunk. There are still tons and tons of disagreement within the government, within even, the Democrats kind of control Congress and the White House. That's considered a good thing for student loan forgiveness, but even among the Democrats, tons of disagreement on whether or not there should be any forgiveness. If
Right.
so,
how
much, and
and who.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There could be, if it happens at all, which I am not sure. I'm nowhere sure about it happening at all. If it does, there may be restrictions put on it in terms of types of loans and income limits. All sorts of things could happen. Having said all that, it is, it's a possibility that's out there. If you take those loans out of the federal program into the private market, much less likely to be forgiven. So I think you want to be kind of extra careful with refinancing these days. In terms of consolidation, you keep your federal loans, not a huge downside, not a huge upside though, because you're not getting a new interest rate. What happens when you consolidate federal loans, they just do a weighted average of all of the interest rates of all of the loans. So you're just getting an average interest rate of what you already have. So not a big upside. You're not getting a much lower interest rate or anything like that. Can be helpful for some people if you've borrowed loans, federal loans at different times, at different colleges. Sometimes your loans are held by different servicers and you have like separate billing. That can be confusing. If it's confusing to you and you want to consolidate because it helps you get organized and just get one bill, that's totally fine to do. You will also, if you have very, very old loans, sometimes through what's called the FELP program, when you borrowed federal student loans through a private bank, that was many, many years ago. But if you still have some of those older loans, consolidating them into the direct loan program can help as well. But again, kind of pros and cons to consolidating and refinancing, and again, may not be necessary at all, but those are what you want to think about. And again, just be careful before turning federal loans private because you do lose some benefits when you do that.
All right, cool.
Okay, and the next question for you, Beth, is from Amy, and Amy asks, for the kids who will truly blossom in college rather than high school, how do you use their less stellar high school stats and social activities to find a school where they can continue to grow and not get bored by going to a less competitive school?
I don't totally know what Amy's asking here. I am going to infer, which I probably shouldn't, that I think what she means is, how can my child take the things he does outside of the classroom, which maybe maybe. I actually don't know. So I'm going to take a step back and say, if that's what you're asking, if it's that your child is doing really interesting things outside of the classroom, but maybe has been less successful in the classroom, can I leverage what he's doing outside, or can he leverage that in order to get into a more selective school than his grades would indicate? Kind of depends on what we're talking about here, right? So if the question is, can he do that and get into Penn? Probably not. Can he do that and get from, go to, gosh, I don't even know off the top of my head, like go to a Drexel rather than, one of the satellite campuses at Penn State? Possibly, yeah. So I'm not sure though if that's entirely what you're asking. So instead, what I'm going to go to is the whole idea that the student is going to get bored at a school that was easier to get into, because I think that is the biggest leap ever. And I can't stress enough how important it is not to make that leap. There are amazing programs and wonderful professors and wonderful students at all of the institutions in this country. And these are places, there are so many places where students can blossom in college. And so the idea that you're going to get bored if you're not at a school where it is incredibly hard to get into, highly rejective, to steal a phrase that is growing in popularity, is simply false. I don't know any other way to say it than that. So what I would encourage is for you, for your child, to be thinking more about, what am I really interested in? What do I want to explore? What is the environment in which your child is going to blossom? So is it one, where in the world is that? Is it a small school? Is it a big school? Is it, thinking about those factors that are going to really lead to him being, I keep saying him, I think she said son, but I probably should, to your child, being comfortable and feeling challenged, but also competent, and where there are the things that they want to study are there. And if they change their mind, there are more options for them to pursue. So it's not super narrowly focused. And I would say that, your student could blossom at a school and emerge as a big fish in a smaller pond and get lots of attention and resources from professors, and really just find a place where they really are going to blossom and not ever get bored. Conversely, they could wind up at a place that's too difficult, where all the other students are so much more accomplished that they start to, or continue maybe to, feel a little intimidated, and the opportunity to blossom doesn't happen because they are so, just, wow, everyone else is so much more accomplished than I am. So I would really, though, above and beyond everything else, step away from the idea that a school that is a little bit less difficult to get into is somehow, therefore, not a school that offers a good education, not a school where a student will be challenged simply because they're coming into their own when they're there. I would say that might make it a great place for them to come into their own. So a little tricky. We have time for like a minute response. So let me see if there's
you can probably do Shafiq's question.
Okay. Shafiq asks, my son just started his senior year of high school and is working on his college applications. Well, when do we need to complete the FAFSA? Yes.
Yeah, relatively quick answer. The FAFSA opens up on October 1st. That's the soonest you can complete the form. Do not get worked up. I know there are some parents who are, online at midnight on October 1st. Got to be the first ones in there. You don't have to get stressed out about that. You need to make sure that you meet the college's deadlines, which can come up anywhere between really November and March. So just find out when your deadlines are. Make sure you get the FAFSA in. But October 1st is the soonest you can do it. There are some schools that may begin to get kind of less generous as the months tick by, even if their deadline's not till March. Maybe they review their budget and find they're running short of funds, and may start to get a little bit less generous. So for that reason, generally the earlier the better. Sometime in October is great. Don't worry about doing it on the 1st. Let them actually work the kinks out before you log in, maybe a week or two later, but probably sometime in October is great.
Okay, awesome. Shannon, thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome.
All right. Next week, Ian is hosting. He's going to be talking about AP Capstone, college list, having a balanced college list, covering the remaining college bills, the remaining balance on the college bills. Lastly, don't forget, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. So the more we get, the easier it is for people to find us. So if you think this is a helpful podcast, we would love for you to review us and make it so that more people can find us. And if you have questions, don't forget, you can post them on our social media, but you could also send them to us at gettingin.voiceamerica@gmail.com. And we are here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific.